Iniciando nossa aula de telegrafia. Hoje mais um texto, mais um ditado. Estamos numa cadência ainda bem tranquila, ok? Nosso ditado hoje tem como referência a resolução 697/2018, ok? Uma parte aqui do texto, passar para os amigos. Tranquilo? Estamos em uma condição intermediária e final de novembro já começa na condição da prova, ok? São 125 caracteres em 5 minutos. Então vamos lá. Vamos começar o nosso ditado em 3, 2, 1. Corrigindo, ficou o seguinte: atribui e destina faixas de radiofrequência ao serviço de radioamador e aprova o regulamento. Ponto. Indo mais uma vez, atribui e destina faixas de radiofrequência ao serviço de radioamador e aprova o regulamento. Ponto. Tranquilo? Quem chegou atrasado é no nosso ditado, perdeu a parte inicial. Eu vou deixar esse nosso ditado na internet, ok? Em alguns segundos já libero e você não perde o ditado, tá bom? Faz mais uma, duas, três vezes, tá? Não tem problema. Mesmo sendo o mesmo ditado, né? Vai fazendo algumas vezes, você vai corrigindo um erro, uma letra, outra que você perdeu, tá bom? Outra coisa, não esqueça da sua manipulação. Então, você já está mais ou menos aí na recepção, né? Treina a sua manipulação. Importante, não corra, ok? Procurei nessa mesma cadência ou um pouquinho só mais depressa, mas mantenha a cadência, ok? Pode até dar uma acelerada, mas procura manter a cadência. Presta atenção nas pausas e bom treino. Qualquer dúvida, diariamente você entra aqui nesse espaço, ó, o espaço do bate-papo. Você escreve, ó, Paulo, estou tendo dificuldade aí numa letra ou na outra, ou estou confundindo, né? Duas letras ou três letras, enfim. Ou mas não consigo definir, né? Sem problemas, ok? Qualquer parte aí do planeta, você acompanha diariamente as nossas aulas e perdeu uma aula, tem a gravação disponível na internet. Bom, como que você pega a gravação? Você entra no YouTube, você digita a rodada alto-falante, vai chegar no nosso canal, ok? E lá vai ter a playlist, tá bom? Nessa playlist, em todas as aulas, tá? Da primeira, segunda, terceira, tudo em ordem cronológica, ok? E tem também, né, fora a playlist, tem vídeos. Você clica em vídeos, tá? Vai ter todos os vídeos, né? Todas as aulas de telegrafia também, nessa relação, mas os vídeos atuais, tranquilo? Agora são 5h09 e vamos em frente. Lembrando que na segunda edição teremos um repeteco dessa primeira aula, ok? Hoje aula 33 de CW. Tranquilo? Então, boa aula, boa sorte. E qualquer dúvida, fala com a gente. Lembrando que anteontem tivemos problemas aí de áudio. Então, quem encontrou vídeos aí bem curtos, né? Anteontem, a primeira edição deu 1h e a segunda edição deu um vídeo lá de 15 minutos. Tá bom? Então, tivemos que encerrar um pouco mais cedo para resolvermos aí o problema do áudio, ok? Já foi resolvido, então, normalizada é a rodada. E vamos em frente. 5h09, já retornando em legislação.
Radio as well, so they recommend to put here our module here into this place here, and with the module we get here a double-sided sticky tape, and you already see it is exactly fitting here onto our DSP when I put here my plus wire away. So I can put it here onto the DSP, and then I can put it upside down here into this area where we would have normally a filter. And as long there is no filter here in the radio, that is a recommended place, and we will definitely follow this recommendation here. Okay, and other than that, we have this wire here, and that is what goes between our preamp and the main amp, so input and output. Don't know right now if blue or red input or output is, no problem. So we will find it in the instruction. Here we have ground, yeah, that is the shield here of our audio wires, and it goes to ground, of course. Then we have here a ground, which is recommended to put it here under this screw. And then the last what we have here is the plus wire, which goes to our regulator, which is here on the board. So we simply solder it to the plus pole, and then that it is. And then, of course, we have to install here a little user panel. But first, let's go step by step. And therefore, first, we have to take out here our main board as our coupling capacitor, or the audio circuit, is underneath here our main board, and that will be our first step to take main board out, take then our coupling capacitor out, and then we can install our audio wires to our board. All right, and here is our main board ready for taking our little coupling capacitor out. And yeah, let me zoom in to the board. And then we see our coupling capacitor, which is this little guy here. And that will be our next step to take it out. All right, our little capacitor is out, and I've already cleaned here the pads a little bit. And yeah, here is our capacitor just lying here on the PCB, and here the Q-tip, just for comparison, the size of the little guy here. Okay, so now let's go and let's connect here our audio wires to our fresh and free solar points that we can go ahead.
Join our digital event and get inspired by expert talks about market trends, application requirements, and solutions.
Quem confia em si, sabe.
Here's our soldered in as shown in our instruction manual. So screen first, then blue, and then red. To be honest, this solder points down here are really very delicate, and if you're not familiar with soldering SMD parts, so I really cannot recommend to do it by your own. So yeah, it is really tiny. The pads are really small, and you really need the right solder tip to do this job, and you really should do jobs like this before. So be warned. And before we go ahead, I always fix it here with some hot glue. You know, this wiring is so delicate that you easily can, get these wires off the board, and you may also pull the pads, and therefore it is always a good idea to put here some hot glue to the wiring. Then it is safe and can't move that much, and that makes it really easier in our next step. All right, so we can go ahead, and I put the PCB back into our chassis, and then we can move on with our wiring and with gluing down our DSP, which is here. And yeah, so let's see that I can get it back in. Okay, so our board is in, and our wiring.
Então vamos lá, a gente começa aqui com isenção, tanto CW como telegrafia, pelos oficiais Marinha, Exército e Aeronáutica, tá bom? Começamos então por militares da Marinha. Então, oficiais reformados da Escola Naval, com conhecimentos básicos de técnico de eletrônica e eletricidade, ok? Também quadro de operadores do Corpo da Arma, o Corpo de Fuzileiros Navais, comunicações, eletrônicas, máquinas, oficiais do Corpo de Engenheiros Técnicos Navais, Corpo de Arma, especializado em eletricidade, aviônica, comunicações, armas submarinas, eletrônica, motores, artilharia, operador de radar e operador de sonar. Aqui, ó. Especializados em telegrafia também, especializado em comunicações navais e praça do Corpo de Fuzileiros Navais, especializados em eletrônica. Então, todas essas especializações pertencentes aos militares da Marinha poderão ter isenção, né, se comprovarem esse conhecimento, ok? Então, isenção aqui, ó. Isenção aqui dos conhecimentos básicos de técnica, eletrônica, eletricidade. Conhecimentos básicos, recepção auditiva de sinais em telegrafia, código Morse. Enfim, né, como você comprova essa situação perante a Anatel? É a terceira coluna aqui, ó. Você comprova com a carteira de identidade do Ministério da Defesa ou do Ministério da Marinha, ok? Todos esses exemplos, você tendo essa carteira de identidade do Ministério da Defesa ou Ministério da Marinha, né, e constando aí essas informações, né, de conhecimentos aí na área de eletrônica, eletricidade, código Morse, ok? Bom, a gente dá mais um intervalo, 5h19. Hoje, na resolução 449/2006, quem vem acompanhando aí com a gente essa leitura, é uma evolução, tá? Artigo por artigo. A gente vai lendo aí diariamente, tanto na primeira edição, como na segunda edição, ok? Mas deixa o referencial para você também dar uma consultada, tá bom? Não só ouvindo a gente, mas tendo a curiosidade, dar uma examinada no material. Então, quem quiser dar uma olhada, anota aí, resolução 449/2006. Você pega no Google, tá bom? Põe a resolução 449/2006, escreve Anatel na frente e a consulta vai direto na legislação, tá bom? Se não puser Anatel, pode vir um monte de outras normas aí com esse mesmo número. Então, quando você joga Anatel, é tudo na área de telecomunicações, tranquilo? Então a gente vai dar uma pausa e já retorna falando aí de outras armas, ok? Isso que a gente está falando hoje é sobre a isenção dos exames de CW e radioeletricidade. Você comprovando que tem um curso, tem um estudo, né, tendo um documento que comprove tudo isso, a Anatel te libera aí dos exames, tá bom? Para quem não sabe, é possível, ok? Engenheiro eletrônico, um curso de técnico em eletrônico também serve. Tá? Tem várias possibilidades, a gente vai estar lendo aí, uma por uma, tá bom? Então, já retornando.
And we can go now ahead with finalizing our project. Okay, so we have installed here our user interface, as you can see. So here's a little metal holder which holds here our little PCB in place, and from the other side we have the LED, and we have of course here our switch, and you see now it is switched in, and now it is switched off. So as we said before, when it is red, that means that our DSP is switched off. So that is our status right now. After we have finalized it, we have this little sticker which goes over our LED and our little push button, and I guess that looks pretty nice. Then yeah, we will see it. Let me now install it. So let me bring the lid back, and yeah, when we are nearly ready here with what we have to do, one hint I want to give you. So we have here a little red LED, and that is an overload indication. So if you have installed your little circuit and it is connected between, so you know where we have connected it, between our preamplifier and our final audio amplifier, and if the level from our preamplifier is too strong, then we would get here a flashing LED, and then you have reduced this level by here our pot, and another pot what we have down there is for the beep volume, and then the other one is for the audio volume, so at the output of this little circuit. So that is what you might need to adjust a little bit. This here is fine. It was perfectly adjusted by the factory, so I do not need to touch this little pots. So, but that is really not a big deal, so everybody can really handle that. Okay, so let me go ahead, and then yeah, let's see what the outcome will be. Okay, so it is ready so far, and let's try if we can get it here over the camera microphones, what the impact of this DSP filter is. So for the moment in time, it is switched off as we see the red light, and let me see if we can show it. So first of all, there is static, right?
Good copy, no problem, my friend. Thank you so much. Good day.
Filter is in. Filter out.
Alpha 61 Fox Kilo, 61 Florida Kilo, clear that.
So the noise is really going down. So I hope you can hear that. It is hard to show, especially here over the camera. Let's see. So that is without filter, with filter. Okay, it is really hard to demonstrate here, but I can tell you so far that with filter, it is easier to understand what the old man is talking.
A carteira de identidade da Marinha, né, com essa menção, vai te isentar aí desses exames, tá bom? Tem que ter a menção, né? Se tiver de telegrafia e eletrônica, eletricidade, já pega as duas áreas, ok? Como são duas matérias aí para promoção classe B, então você já fica isento, ok? Tem que constar uma ou outra, ou as duas, né? Se tiver as duas, melhor. Já fica isento aí do CW e da radioeletricidade, ok? Para militares do Exército, mesma coisa. Oficiais e cadetes do 4º ano da Arma de Comunicações, oficiais de qualquer arma, cursidores do curso 1, que é oficial de comunicações da Escola de Comunicações do Exército, e praças possuidores do curso S17, que é telegrafia, ok? Escola de Comunicações do Exército. Também, possuidores dos cursos S19, que é o avançado em eletrônica, ou S21, que é avançado de eletricidade, da Escola de Comunicações do Exército, ok? Nesse caso, vai ter lá conhecimentos básicos técnicos de eletrônica, transmissão, recepção de sinais em código Morse, conhecimentos básicos técnicos de eletrônica, eletricidade, transmissão, recepção, código Morse, ok. Tá, essa menção tem que fazer parte no documento, tá bom? Você vai provar com a carteira de identidade do Ministério da Defesa ou do Exército ou do Ministério do Exército, ok? Dimensão dessas duas matérias, tranquilo? Mesma coisa que eu falei da Marinha, né? Serve para o Exército. Então, carteira de identidade do Ministério da Defesa ou Ministério do Exército ou ainda certificado de conclusão do curso expedido pela escola, ok? Por isso que se relaciona às duas matérias, em qualquer documento do Exército ou da Marinha, né, você já fica isento. junta, né? Tem que juntar na Anatel e pedir a isenção para essas duas matérias na prova, ok? E, por último, militares da aeronáutica, né? Falamos da Marinha, Exército, agora Aeronáutica. Então, quem pode? Olha lá. Oficiais aviadores, cadetes aviadores, do último ano da Academia da Força Aérea. Oficiais especialistas em comunicação, suboficiais e sargentos telegrafistas, formado pela Escola de Aeronáutica, cabos radiotelegrafistas, formado pelo Comando Aéreo Regional, enfim, qualquer uma dessas situações e patentes, né, na hierarquia, né, pode juntar esse documento e comprovar esses conhecimentos, ok? Conhecimentos básicos técnicos de eletrônica, eletricidade, transmissão, recepção auditiva de sinais em código Morse, conhecimentos básicos, transmissão e recepção auditiva de código Morse. Okay. No caso da aeronáutica, carteira de identidade do Ministério da Defesa ou do ex-Ministério da Aeronáutica. Das situações, ou seja, qual for a patente, né, sua hierarquia no Ministério da Aeronáutica ou perante a Aeronáutica, mesma coisa, né? Você junta esse documento na Anatel e pede isenção, né, dizendo que teve lá essa matéria e comprovando, né? Teve errado de eletricidade e telegrafia. Também fica. Bom, a gente vai dar mais um intervalo. São 5h31. E a gente lembra os amigos que janeiro, dia 2, segunda-feira, iniciando aí mais um curso. Quem pretende fazer com a gente aí CW, Legislação, o curso Comando de Rodadas, serão 4 meses de aulas. Janeiro, fevereiro, março e abril. Tranquilo? Então, boas aulas, vai se preparando. Janeiro está chegando, né? Estamos pertinho de dezembro. Dezembro finaliza esse atual curso, ok? E dia 2, segunda-feira, iniciando aí mais uma jornada, mais 3 cursos. Você poderá fazer com a gente via radiofrequência, via internet e via playlist. Qualquer uma das 3 opções, a qualquer momento você entra aí na rodada e tira dúvidas com a gente. Via radiofrequência, via internet, na live, tranquilo? Então, boa sorte e vamos em frente. Vou dar uma pausa e já retornando em legislação.
In today's video, we're going to take a close look at this RigExpert AA55 Zoom antenna analyzer, really kind of geared towards the radio amateur who likes operating in HF and the 6-meter frequency bands. As the 55 stands for 55 megahertz, which is the upper frequency range of this analyzer. RigExpert makes about 10 different models of analyzers that range from a max frequency of 30 megahertz up to 1400 megahertz, or 1.4 gigahertz. We should more accurately call this unit a multifunction antenna and cable analyzer because it really is a lot more than simply an antenna analyzer. Let's go take a look at what I mean by that. Do a quick rundown of the various measurements you can make with this AA55 Zoom. We've got the ability to plot the complex impedance versus frequency on a Smith chart, as well as plotting SWR versus frequency on a traditional SWR sweep. Plot just complex impedance versus frequency, the real and reactive components. The SWR meter is a single frequency SWR meter that has a couple of interesting modes in it. All params is a way of looking at everything from the SWR, return loss, complex impedance, etc. at a given frequency. The setup function allows you to go in and set up the language, the units, whether you want it to be imperial units or metric units, set up frequency bands, amateur radio frequency bands to be in the Americas or Europe and other parts of the world. There's a calibrate function that allows you to do a full vector calibration so that you can establish a reference plane either at the instrument's connector or maybe at the end of a piece of coax. So you can actually make measurements referred to the antenna feed point impedance. You can also sweep return loss versus frequency. The multi-SWR function allows you to measure SWR at multiple frequencies, really handy when you're trying to tune a multi-band antenna and looking for the interaction between tuning one band and seeing its reaction on another band. And there are some additional tools for coax measurements, which can be really handy. A stub tuner that allows you to to measure and tune particular lengths for quarter wave and a half wave length long hunks of coax or stubs of coax. You can also measure the length and velocity factor of coax, and also sweep the cable loss and cable impedance versus frequency. So lots of functionality and actually very easy to use. If you take a look at the icons here on the left-hand side, the number is associated with the keypad number. So for the Smith chart, we would just hit number 2, and you see that key number 2 says polar, and that's essentially the Smith chart. If you want to do an SWR chart, you could just hit the number 4, and it says SWR right there. The real and imaginary impedance plot is key number 5, etc. So it's very, very easy to figure out what to do. And also, no matter where you are in a measurement or things like that, the 1 key is generally a help key, and it tells you so right here. If you hit 1, it actually gives you help, and you can scroll through and get help about what these various keys do. So you don't even have to crack the manual open, even though the manual is actually very well written. I got access to a 20-meter antenna down here in the basement shack, so let me hook that up to the analyzer here, and we'll run through some of the measurements that we can make on this antenna. Let's start off with the very basic SWR chart. So I'll select that by either hitting 4 or arrowing up and down until I select that item and hitting OK. And right now I've got it set to sweep with a center frequency of 27.5 megahertz and a sweep 27.5 on either side. So it's the full range sweep. And if I hit OK, we're sweeping that full range of the antenna. Now what you can see on this sweep are these various colored bands. Each of these colored blue bars represent amateur radio bands. In this case, I've got it set for the US and North America amateur radio bands. And we can actually see we've got a dip in the SWR right here on this band, which happens to be the 20-meter band. In fact, the minimum is being shown here at about 14,360, just outside the amateur radio band, about 1.89. Now, any of the plots that are made...
Exemplo, ok? Bom, saindo agora do Exército, Marinha Aeronáutica, para os civis, ok? Aí quem pode pedir essa isenção perante a Anatel? Tá aqui, ó. Tem uma coluna, a primeira coluna, né? A primeira coluna tá aqui, ó, civis, ok? Então, saindo aí, Exército, Marinha Aeronáutica, você entra aí, engenheiros, alunos da Escola de Ensino Superior e Tecnológicos, especializados em eletrônica ou telecomunicações. Radiotelegrafistas formados por escolas oficiais ou oficializadas também. Tem que ter conhecimento técnico e básico de eletrônica e eletricidade, conhecimentos técnicos da transmissão e recepção auditiva em código Morse. E você junta, por exemplo, para quem for engenheiro, a carteira do CREA, ok? Diploma registrado no Ministério da Educação, ou o currículo, né, com histórico que demonstre terem sido aprovados em disciplinas que contenham todos os tópicos relativos ao programa de conhecimento técnico. Certificado de radiotelegrafista expedido pela escola pertinente. Bom, se você teve um curso técnico, eletrônica, radioeletricidade, ou como provar, né, o conhecimento aí do CW, né, algum documento, alguma coisa, junta, ok? Junta ali na Anatel e pede a isenção das 2 matérias, tranquilo? Ou de uma das 2. Né? De repente você não tem de CW, vai ter que fazer a prova para CW. Ou radioeletricidade, né? Enfim. Mas quem tiver, tá aqui, ó. Você pode ficar isento, pelo que está dizendo nessa tabela aqui, ok? Essa tabela aqui, a tabela 1 do anexo 3, que é a última tabela da resolução 449/2006, faz a possibilidade aí de isenção nas provas CW ou radioeletricidade, para quem comprovar esse estudo, tá bom? Pode ser Exército, Marinha Aeronáutica ou civis em geral. Comprovando, a Anatel vai te conceder essa isenção e você fica tranquilo. Ok? Então, hoje, a chamada aí foi para isenção a prova de CW como radioeletricidade. Dá uma olhada nessa tabela aqui. Né? Se você se enquadrar, boa sorte. É só entrar com o requerimento e a prova, né, dessa documentação. Tira um xerox, tá, dessa carteira do Ministério de Defesa, da Marinha, Exército, Aeronáutica, ou do ex-Ministério da Marinha, do Exército ou Aeronáutica, ok? Qualquer documento que você tenha, né, é válido, tranquilo? Como documento, né, que comprove essa condição e contendo a informação, mais importante, né? Não só o documento do Exército, Marinha e Aeronáutica, ou CREA, uma conclusão de curso técnico, mas que conste, né, que você efetivamente fez o curso, tranquilo? Então tá aí. São 3 horas e 50 minutos. Eu estou liberando já essa primeira parte da leitura da lei. Bom, agora são 5 horas e 46 minutos. Quem perdeu a primeira aula de CW, na segunda edição teremos aí um repeteco, ok? Então fica tranquilo que teremos ainda amanhã a mesma lição, a mesma aula, CW, aula 33 hoje. Quem quiser pegar na playlist, passa por lá, aula 33, ok? Então vamos em frente. Eu vou dar oportunidade aí na frequência e já retornando. Oportunidade com bom dia.
Essentially, we want the return loss to be as high as possible when the SWR is low as possible. So we can actually see we get a return loss here of about 15 or so, 14.8 at 14.24 megahertz. So those four measurements, the Smith chart, SWR return loss, and complex impedance sweeps, are all kind of the swept measurements that you can make with this antenna analyzer. But there's a number of other measurements we can make which are equally useful. So if we hit the 7 key, or the SWR key, we'll get essentially a SWR meter. And by hitting the OK checkmark key here, we can start the meter reading. That's what the flashing indicator means here. And this shows us our measurement frequency, graphically and numerically showing the SWR, as well as showing the return loss. Again, I can hit the frequency keys to move up and down in frequency and see how the SWR changes at different frequencies. And if I use the function and arrow keys, we can move the frequency in larger steps. And of course, hitting the frequency and range key, we can actually dial in a frequency directly if we want to do that. But there's some other interesting capability here. Let's take a look at the help key and see what I'm talking about. So we talked about how to change frequency and set frequency, start and stop the meter. But there's also this function here called SWR to air. This is actually a very interesting feature. Let's look at that right now. The SWR to air feature is really useful when the analyzer is sitting in a spot where you can't see it when you're making adjustments on the antenna. It could be that the analyzer is sitting at the end of a coax, maybe inside your vehicle or inside your Radio Shack, and you're outside making physical adjustments to the antenna, and you can't see what the meter reading is saying. So the SWR to air function basically will transmit a code to tell you what is going on with the SWR as you're making adjustments to your antenna. You set the SWR to air transmit frequency using the function 3 key, and then you start this up. Let me show you what that looks like. Now, I've already set the SWR to air transmit frequency to 144.500 megahertz, so I can hear it on this little handy talkie. So I could stick this thing in my back pocket when I'm making adjustments to the antenna. And then in order to enable this function, I hit the function and checkmark key. So let's actually go do that. So I hit the function and checkmark. We hear one short beep coming out of the radio. So the single beep tells us that we're in the 1 to 1.0 to 1.99 SWR range. As we go higher in SWR, the duration of that beep gets longer. So we can hear now that we're at 1.76, 1.77, 1.8. The length of that beep is longer than it was down here. See, it's a nice short beep now that we're below 1.5 to 1. If we go even higher in frequency, we get into the 2s. It's transmitting 2 beeps. Okay. We get into the 3s and above, it transmits 3 or 4 beeps to tell us that we're way out in SWR. So by listening to these beeps and how many are being transmitted, and then the duration of them, we can see how our SWR is doing remotely without having to actually be seeing what the meter is doing. Now, another handy feature for the single frequency SWR measurement is the heartbeat display. And that display is entered by hitting the function and up arrow. So if I hit the function up arrow here, we get this heartbeat display. And what this is kind of like a scrolling, almost like a heartbeat monitor, which is why it's called that. So as the SWR changes, this bar graph changes. So let's see if I can adjust frequency up and down. We can actually see the SWR changing because I'm changing frequency. So we can tell by looking at this bar graph very quickly if I'm making adjustments in the right direction, either with an antenna tuner or by actually tuning my antenna physically. So it's another easy way to kind of monitor how the changes that you're making to the antenna or your antenna tuner are affecting the SWR. Now, an interesting variation on the single frequency SWR meter is the multi-SWR measurement. We hit the function and 7 key. We look at the multi-SWR measurement. Now, this is allowing us to look at SWR measurements on multiple frequencies essentially at the same time. Now, we can see in this case, I've got a single band antenna, so I've got good SWR on the 20 meter band, but very bad SWR on all the others. But if we were looking at a multi-band antenna, like a trap dipole or a multi-band vertical, oftentimes when you're making adjustments on one band, it will affect the other bands slightly. So this will allow you to kind of see the effect on all of the bands as you're making band-specific adjustments on that antenna. Very handy feature. In addition to this numeric mode for the multi-SWR, we'll also see that there's a graph mode that's entered by hitting the function and up key. So we go and hit the function up and hit OK to run. We essentially get a little graph of each one. So instead of actually looking at the numbers, you can actually see what the SWR sweep is doing in each of those particular bands. And of course, you've got the ability, no matter which mode you're in here, to make adjustments to what frequency it is that you're looking at on each of those bands. And finally, the all function, character or key number 8, will allow me to actually get live measurements of SWR, complex impedance and phase, return loss, as well as the complex impedance and the capacitive and inductive components measured kind of live. And again, we can adjust frequency and watch those things change. So as we've seen, this is a very comprehensive analyzer for looking at antenna mismatch and SWR conditions, complex impedance conditions for both swept as well as fixed and multi-frequencies. Very handy analyzer. Let's take a look at some of the other tools for doing some measurements on coax. Next, we'll take a look at some of the coax measurement tools that we have. If we hit OK under Tools, the first one is the stub tuner. This tool allows us to determine the half wavelength and quarter wavelength lengths of coax. So if I hit OK on this, it tells me to connect the cable with an open or short at the far end and then press the check mark to start. So I've got this hunk of cable here that's open at the far end. And what it's telling me is that this hunk of cable is a quarter wavelength long at a frequency of 5.24 megahertz, and it's a half wavelength long at 12.6 megahertz. And again, these could be handy values because what we know from coax is that, or transmission lines, is that if you use a half wavelength at a given frequency, the impedance seen at the feed point of the coax is exactly the same as the feed point or the impedance.
Agora são 5 horas, 55 minutos. E a gente lembra os amigos que no domingo, dia 27, não agora, ok? Não depois da manhã, o outro domingo, 27/11, teremos encontro de radioamadores em Ermelino, Matarazzo. Sempre lembrando que lá é domingo sim, domingo não. Então tivemos aí o domingo passado, então agora esse próximo negativo, ok? Então só no dia 27 teremos Ermelino do Matarazzo. Para quem não conhece, anota o endereço. Parque Municipal, Ermelino Matarazzo, Rua Abel Tavares, 1541. Primo, quinto, quarto, segundo. Rua Abel Tavares, 1542. Tranquilo? E outra coisa, todos convidados, não só radioamadores, como corujas, PX, simpatizantes aí do hobby, todo mundo poderá comparecer. É o dia inteiro de evento, tem a feirinha de eletroca, compra, venda de equipamentos, antenas, fontes, enfim. E também, pessoal, tem churrasco, tem bebidas, ok? Refrigerantes, água, enfim. Você passa o domingo inteiro por lá, come até por lá, ok? Tem um churrasquinho no capricho e tem um domingo aí bem agradável, tá bom? Então fica a dica aí do ponto de encontro de radioamadores em Ermelino, Matarazzo. Domingo sim, domingo não. Então, domingo dia 27, o outro domingo, teremos, tá bom? São 5 horas e 56 minutos e já retornando.
Is what's being seen right here. Now, if you're trying to design maybe a matching circuit to fit at the base of an antenna, you really want to measure the complex impedance at the antenna feed point, not here. But if you connect up a piece of coax, the impedance seen here is not going to be the same as it is over at the antenna. So you can use a Smith chart and things like that to figure it out, or you can actually use the calibrate function to establish a reference plane at the far end of the coax. Let me show you how you do that. So just as an example, let's do a Smith chart real quick without anything connected here. So we just have an open circuit. And we can see that the results are all right here, essentially at the open circuit location on the Smith chart. Now I've connected up a short, 5 or 6 foot length of coax here. And let's run the Smith chart again. We can actually see that we're rotating essentially around the Smith chart. We went, part of the way away from our open circuit point. And then as the frequency ramps up, we're going a little bit further. So that now I've got the end of the coax open. So really from the end of the coax, all the points should wind up right here. But because the coax transforms the impedance, we're actually moving around the Smith chart. But if I wanted to measure the impedance that appears at the far end of my coax, I need to establish the far end of the coax as the new measurement reference point. That's what we'll do with calibration. Okay, so we'll exit out of the Smith chart and scroll down to select calibrate, and I'll hit check mark to start the calibration. And it's just telling me to prepare my open, load, and short for calibration standards, which I have right here. And we'll get ready to start. And the first thing we do is connect our calibrated open to our end of the coax and hit the check mark to run that portion of the calibration. It's collecting some data. And then we connect the short to the end of the coax here. And that's this guy right here. And then we'll hit the check mark again once I got that tightened up. And then finally, after this is done, we connect our 50 ohm load to the end of the coax here and grab data there. And once we've done that, we've collected all of the information we need to actually run the calibrations. We hit function F2 to activate and deactivate the calibration for the measurement. Let's go look at how that affects what we saw on the Smith chart. Now remember, here's our Smith chart result that we got without calibrating to the end of the cable. By hitting the function 2 key, we can actually apply the calibration. And now if we take a look, all of our measurement points are right at the open. If I hit run again, you just kind of see it all updating right there. So now we've got an open at the end of this length of coax, and we're actually accurately showing that on the Smith chart. So now any load that we connect here could be our antenna. What we're going to see on the Smith chart and all of the other swept measurements are going to be with respect to this location at the end of the cable. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, all of the swept measurements, whether they're Smith charts or SWR plots or things like that, will give you essentially 100 points across the frequency range that you're sweeping. You do have the option of connecting the analyzer up via USB port to a PC. And RigExpert has software that allows you to repeat all these same measurements on the PC with up to 1,000 points in the sweep. So that could be a really handy way to get more high resolution data if you need that. How about the only thing we really didn't cover so far were some of the setup options. So this is where you can set the language. I've got it set to English. The color palette I've got set to orange, which is really kind of this multicolor thing we've been looking at. But there are two monochrome black and white type of displays. For high contrast is a white background with black text and things like that. Probably would work well outdoors when you've got bright sunlight. But then also you can also do the inverse of that as well. Still a black and white, but with now inverse of the other one. But the multicolor one is pretty pleasant to look at. Battery, this kind of controls when the screen will go dim and when the unit will go back to sleep. I had been running it for the video here mainly on intensive, so the display wouldn't go dim while I was doing any filming here. But under normal operation, I usually leave it under optimal. Sound turns on or off as sound associated with the key presses on the membrane keypad. Again, I turned it off because I didn't want it beeping while I was doing the video here. System impedance allows you to select what system impedance you're actually dealing with. In most cases, we're going to be dealing with 50 ohms, but you might be dealing with 75 ohm coax and a 75 ohm system. You can actually make all your measurements with respect to 75 ohms, SWR measurements, reference a Smith chart to that, as well as all the way up to 600 ohm ladder line feed. So whatever you're typically using, but we'll use 50 ohms in our particular case. Units, again, can be imperial or metric. I've got it set to imperial because I'm here in the US. The bands allows you to select the amateur radio bands for different parts of the world to make it easy to select a particular band to do measurements on. And then the default cable velocity factor, in most cases we're using kind of foam dielectric, which is a 0.66 dielectric. Any frequency correction, if there's any errors you want to correct. And then you could also reset all the settings back to factory defaults. As I did mention, anytime you make a sweep, you can actually save those sweeps to look at SWR and Smith charts and things like that, at a later date. If you wanted to clear all those saved charts, you can do that right from here as well. I hope you enjoyed this review of this RigExpert AA55 Zoom. I think a really versatile analyzer, very, very easy to use, lots of ways of getting help. The on-screen icons tell you what keys do what. The keys are actually clearly labeled to what they do for both their primary function and their shifted or F function of those keys. The help key will also give you a lot of information about how to set various parameters and do various functions within any of the particular measurements. So again, a real handy analyzer. I don't do a lot of product reviews, but those that I do, I do on products that I really enjoy. And I think this is going to be really a fantastic analyzer for my antenna experiments. So thanks again for watching. If you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so.
WB2NHJ, go ahead.
WB2NHJ, nice to meet you. This is Whiskey 2, Alpha Echo Whiskey, W2AEW.
W2AEW, WB2NHJ. Did I get that right?
Oh, you got it correct. Name here is Alan, Alpha Lima, Alpha November, running QRP, just about 5 watts, just 5 watts from New Jersey. Just wondering for a quick signal report, over.
Yeah. You're running about a 5 by 6 or 7.
Today, we're going to take a quick look at this Fox X-Ray 4 Charlie, the FX4C SDR HF QRP transceiver. This very small QRP HF transceiver is actually quite impressive. I just spent a week with it out on vacation, and I was telling you that outside of 1 or 2 little things, I've been very impressed with this radio. All right, let's start by taking a look at the radio physically. It's basically a palm-sized HF transceiver. Operates from 75 meters up to 6 meters in full transceive mode, but then has wideband receive from broadcast AM up through the 2 meter band. So on this side of the rig, we've got the antenna connector. the connector for some external headphones, an external speaker, although the internal speaker works quite well, and then the connector for the hand mic on-off switch over here.
E hoje a gente fala aqui da faixa de 2 milímetros. Está na tela, ok? Quem estiver na internet com a gente, dá uma olhada aí na tela, que tem aí a tabela, tá bom? Lá, essa tabela, como todas as outras que já analisamos, tem as colunas, ok? Várias colunas. A primeira da frequência. A principal característica, a gente faz a leitura em gigahertz, ok? Então, a coluna da frequência, a gente vai lembrar do range, né, de quanto a quanto nesse comprimento de onda. Então, de 134 a 141 gigahertz, ok? Então, atenção no range, olha lá. De quanto a quanto vamos analisar? De 134 a 141, o quê? Gigahertz, tranquilo? Que banda? 2 milímetros, olha lá. Análise da faixa, comprimento de onda, 2 milímetros. Faixa, banda, comprimento de onda, tudo igual, tudo sinônimo, não se preocupe. A legislação usa o quê? Faixa, então, pode manter o termo faixa, não é faixa preta do judô nem do karatê, mas sinônimo de banda, tá bom? Bom, primeiro segmento. Então, agora tem um sub-range, né? Tem o range da faixa e tem o range de cada segmento, ou subdivisão dessa banda. Vai de 134 a 134,928 gigahertz, ok? Fala modos, né? Tem várias colunas com modos e operações, ok? Então, vamos lá. Primeira possibilidade. CW, SSB, AM, FM, DV, modos digitais e mais modos. Olha lá, última coluna, o que nós temos aí? Satélites. Então, fica esperto. Esse primeiro segmento, então, 134 a 134,928 gigahertz. Quero dar 7 possibilidades viáveis, né, mas está a aplicação aqui, ó, satélites, ok? Próximo segmento. 134,928 gigahertz a 134,93 gigahertz. Você faz CW, SSB. Presta atenção que tem 2 modos analógicos que estão de fora, ó, AM e FM, ok? Então, AM e FM negativo nesse segmento. DV, modos digitais, né? Digital Voice, modos digitais e demais modos permitidos. Tá? Tem uma observação aqui, ó. Sempre na última coluna, né? Sempre na última coluna vem aí o direcionamento, né? A destinação do segmento, ok? Centro de atividade para modos com banda estreita, 134,93 GHz. Tá? Essa dica é o seguinte: você usa nessa referência, né, para chamada, para ouvir, né, eventualmente algum amigo, tá? Uma dica, né, de onde vai estar rolando ali algumas chamadas, ok? Olha lá, centro de atividade. Tá? Banda estreita por quê? Se prestou atenção, não entra 2 modos analógicos, olha lá. Nem AM, nem FM. Consequentemente, esses 2 modos analógicos têm uma largura de faixa muito grande. Então, demais modos, tudo bem. Né? CW, SSB, banda estreita, né? Olha lá a dica, banda estreita. Modos com banda estreita, tá bem claro aqui, ó. Bom, a gente vai dar mais um intervalo e já retornando. Lembrando, hoje, analisando a faixa de 2 milímetros, ou seja, o comprimento de onda de 2 milímetros, uma frequência bem alta, ok? Tanto que a legislação já entra em gigahertz, 133 gigahertz, e depois da análise dessa banda, a gente vai para a última do nosso radioamadorismo, ok? que eu chamo do teto, né? O teto é a frequência mais alta que nós podemos usar. Tá? Qual seria, né? A gente vai entrar ainda mais para frente, ok? 250 GHz, tá bom? Frequência bem alta, porém, né, o menor comprimento de onda do radioamadorismo. Equivalente a 1 milímetro, tá bom? 1 milímetro comprimento de onda e absurdamente frequência muito alta. 250 GHz. Tá, a gente vai entrar mais para frente. Por enquanto, só para você ter uma noção aí das bandas e análises, né, dos segmentos, subdivisões e tudo que a gente pode usar no radioamadorismo. Tá bom? Então, vou dar intervalo e já retornando. 6 horas 11 minutos. Oportunidade com um bom dia.
Attenuator. If we touch and hold the IF ATT key, you can see that lights up, indicating that we've enabled the front-end attenuator. Push and hold it again, and that turns off. Single pushes on the IF ATT button change the AGC characteristics. Right now, as we can see in the middle here, the AGC is on medium speed. Touch it, it goes to fast. Touch it again goes to M for manual, but right now that doesn't do anything according to the maker, but that may be a manual RF gain control in the future. Touch it again, it goes to slow and cycles back to medium. The power supply voltage is shown in the upper right corner. In this case, it says 13.3 volts. Of course, across the center of the display, we have the active VFO frequency, as well as the sub-VFO, or the VFO A and B, if you will. Right now, B is active, so this is going to be the B frequency. The VFO A frequency is here. Again, switching the A and B toggles between those two. And below that is our S meter and power output meter during transmit. When tuning the radio, you essentially adjust which digit you're going to adjust with the tune knob simply by pushing the tune knob. You see there's a little caret above this digit right here. And if I touch that, we see that now move to the digit over here. If I turn the knob, that digit changes. I can push it, now change it by tens of kilohertz, push it again to hundreds of kilohertz, and back down to 10 hertz, 100 hertz, and 1 kilohertz. You can also push and turn if you want to select it more quickly. In the upper right corner, we actually see the receive filter characteristics. In this case, we're on single sideband mode, or lower sideband specifically. I've got the 3 kilohertz filter tuned in, and we can see graphically what that looks like. By touching on the filter button, we can cycle between the available filters in this mode. You can see I got a 1.5 kilohertz filter, 1.8, 2.1, 2.4, 2.7, and back to 3 kilohertz. If we switch to CW mode, and go through our filter selections, we can see we've got an 800 hertz filter, and then we cycle to the lowest one, which is 50 hertz. I found this to be a little bit ringy, but under very crowded conditions, it might work well. Then there's also a 100 hertz, 200, 300, 500, and then back to 8. I found that the upper 3 work quite well. The 300 hertz, 500 hertz is what I use most of the time on CW, and 800 hertz all work very well. Below that, it shows you the RIT setting. Right now it's +0, so we're not receiving at a slightly offset frequency. By touching the RIT button here, we can now adjust the RIT up or down, and that the RIT will adjust based on where we have the caret. And you simply touch the RIT button again to get out of that mode. The previously mentioned side tone volume, side tone frequency, and key speed, which you can adjust by cycling. All those values are shown right on the display for you. Now, let's see, listen to this station here through a couple of the CW filters. There's the 800 hertz filter. The 50 hertz, like I said, works well, a little bit ringy. 100 hertz, 200, 300 hertz filter, 500, and 800 hertz. So let's take a listen to the single sideband filter selections. So this is the 3 kilohertz filter. 1.5 kilohertz filter, 1.8, 2.1, 2.4, 2.7, and the 3 kilohertz filter. Not too bad through that tiny little speaker. Now, to change bands on the radio, we simply hit the F button, and we can see the band changes. And you can actually just cycle through the various bands using the tune control, and then just let it sit, and it'll actually switch to those bands. It'll just revert to that after about 7 or 8 seconds. Or you can actually touch the F button again, and it will go back. Touching and holding the F button will actually put on a keyboard lock so that changing the knobs or anything won't have any effect on what you're doing. Touching and holding it again will unlock the various controls. Now, if you touch and hold the AM/FM button, you'll switch between FM and AM receive modes. But if I push and hold the AM/FM button down, then it switches to receive only mode. You see it says RX up here. And now when you go to the band selections, you see you have more bands selected, down from medium wave, which is broadcast AM, all the way up through many of the shortwave receiving bands, including all the way up to 2-meter FM. Now, of course, you touch and hold the AM/FM button again to switch back into transceive mode, where the bands that show up now on the band select are only the HF amateur radio bands. Well, actually HF plus 6 meters. Well, there you have it. It's a little bit of a run through of how to operate this FX4C, a little bit of demonstration of all the capabilities that are on the display and all the functionality. Now, I'll also mention that on the USB port, there's actually a built-in USB sound card. So the rig is really digital mode ready. And we saw that when cycling through single sideband. You've got SSB digital low, SSB digital upper, as well as just normal upper and lower sideband. With that sound card, you can directly use that for things like FT8 and other digital sound card modes directly, as the sound card is built in. So it looks like a USB device when you hook it up to your PC. That same USB port is what's going to be used to reprogram and reload firmware. Currently, there's version 1.0 firmware on this unit. It is relatively new, and I've been in email contact with the developer, and there's a number of things he's got planned for future versions of firmware, and the firmware update process is actually pretty easy. Maybe later on, as new firmware comes out, we'll do another video to show how to do the firmware update. Now, overall, I've been extremely impressed with this radio. As I mentioned at the beginning, I spent about a week with this radio on vacation, set up a temporary end-fed antenna, and worked lots of stations, mainly on CW and some on single sideband. I just used my little miniature straight key here. I have not used it yet with the keyer, with the paddles. And then for single sideband, I used the supplied little small handheld microphone. The audio quality reports I got on single sideband were excellent. They said the audio was extremely clear and really sharp and punch right through. And anybody that I could hear on the radio, I could work. I talked about all the things this rig does really well. And there's really only one very minor complaint that I have. And that's in CW mode, because we've got close to a 20 kilohertz wide receive bandwidth. If you have strong CW signals outside of the frequency range that you're listening to, those very strong signals can affect the gain for the signal that you're listening to. So essentially the AGC can kind of get knocked down from strong adjacent signals. And I've only found this to be a problem when band conditions are really good and the band is actually very crowded and you're trying to listen to a very weak station. But again, that's a pretty minor complaint. And during my week-long vacation using the radio, it wasn't an issue at all. And the only place I notice it is here at home, where I've got my larger antenna that picks up a lot more stations with a lot higher strength.
DV, Digital Voice, modos digitais e demais modos, se enquadre nessa possibilidade, ok? Qual frequência é a referência? 134 ponto, ou vírgula 93 GHz, ok? Próximo segmento. 34,93 GHz a 136 GHz, olha lá, CW, SSB, AM, FM, Digital Voice, modos digitais, demais modos permitidos. Todas, tá? Todas as colunas têm um X. Consequentemente, tá? Você pode fazer todas essas modalidades ou modos de operação nesse segmento. E tá aqui, ó, o porquê? Porque na última coluna não tem aqui aplicações ou observações, totalmente free, ok? Totalmente livre, você usa e abusa aí, conversa, faz telegrafia, modos digitais, tranquilo. Bom, último segmento, vamos lá. 136 GHz, 141 GHz. Tem aqui, ó, CW, SSB, AM, FM, DV. Modos digitais e mais modos permitidos. Então, as 7 possibilidades da tabela, né, você pode usar. Só que tem um detalhe, nota 1. Olha lá, última coluna. Vamos pegar a tabela, abrir aqui, ó, maior. Tá vendo a coluna aqui, ó, essa. Essa última coluna é o segredo, tá bom? Então, na última coluna, tem a nota 1 aqui, ó. O que fala a nota 1? Baixo, ó, no rodapé, hein? Nota 1. Utilizar preferencialmente segmento compreendido entre 134 GHz e 136 GHz. Então, utilizar preferencialmente. Aqui não está dizendo obrigatoriamente. Ou seja, né, eu uso, né, de 136 a 141 ao meu bel prazer, ok? Só uma dica, né, de uso preferencial nesse segmento. Se não é obrigatório, alguém fala, olha, na estrada, né, preferencialmente, lá na rodovia dos Bandeirantes, vai a 90, 100 por hora, né, na faixa do meio. Tá, mas eu quero ir um pouco mais depressa, vou na faixa da esquerda, 120. É permitido? Sim. Eu posso andar 120, vou na esquerda, 120. Tá bom? Então, aqui é só uma dica, né? Preferencialmente, você trabalha aqui entre 134 e 136 GHz. Tá? Se eu não quiser, eu vou aqui de 136 a 141. Então, apenas algumas dicas da legislação. O que pode ser isso, né? Tem alguns países, esses segmentos não vão até 136 GHz, ou de 136 a 141. Então, às vezes, essa dica, né, tá te dando um norte, né, que alguns países aí não vão utilizar esse segmento final que a gente utiliza aqui no Brasil, ok? Como tem bandas, né, com restrição de frequência, como tem restrições de potência em outros países, tá? Em frequências altas você tem isso também, né? Tem países que não chegam nesse segmento aqui, ó. Então, essa nota 1, né, te dá uma dica, né, que você vai ter mais possibilidades de contatos, né, por conta de alguns países que não chegam nessa frequência. Tá? Então, isso depois, quando você for fazer esse segmento, preste atenção, né, em que países tem restrição de uso de frequência. O range não é tão grande como o nosso. Bom? E você já se baseia para fazer alguns contatos. Tá? Ou via satélite, ou, né, demais modos permitidos, né, reflexão lunar, etc, etc, ok? Então tá aí. Com isso, a gente analisou aqui a faixa dos 2 milímetros, correspondendo aqui no range de 134 a 141 GHz. Ok? Na terça-feira a gente finaliza os estudos aí desse segmento, tá bom? Agora são 6 horas 25 minutos. Lembrando que tivemos anteontem, problemas de áudio na radiofrequência, ok? Quem acompanha a rodada pela internet não percebeu nada, né? O áudio normal, tá bom? Quem acompanha a rodada via radiofrequência, percebeu que ficamos aí sem áudio, ok? Então, anteontem, problemas aí na rodada, né? O áudio aí inexistente, portanto, foram gravações bem curtas. Na primeira edição, aproximadamente 1 hora, e na segunda edição não passou de 15 minutos, ok? Então fica a dica aí que foi por conta de problemas de áudio na rodada, tá bom? E vamos em frente. 6 horas e 25 minutos. Oportunidade aos amigos com um bom dia.
The hand mic, also power cable, also the same as the X5105. This is the type C, a data cable for connection between a computer and transceiver, and the hand mic body. It's pretty the same hand mic as the X5105 has. All right, and here in this small box is one interesting thing, that this transceiver comes with the charger. Finally, because the X5105, it doesn't have the charger. This one has the charger, but what is really interesting on this charger is that is a 5-volt charger, as you can see here. A 5-volt and 2000 milliamp charger is included in the package. I presume that this radio has some kind of booster inside circuitry, because it charged with the 5 volts, and usually charging systems or charging adapters comes with 12 volts or 13.8. So maybe some kind of booster inside, I don't know yet. All right, that's all. The box is empty, and now let's look closer on the radio itself. All right, so let's look closer to this Zygo X6100. As you can see, that is completely black body of this radio and is made of a metallic shield, which is great and also good for cooling. And you can see this structure. I presume that is for cooling of this radio. It doesn't have any fan or something. So just this kind of body cooling here. Okay, and on the back side of this radio, we have the legs. This is really good feature. And the same legs are used on the X5105, just slightly different in a design, because this is machined inside to the body. Also, it has a click, and pretty the same here with the 6100. It has a click. As you can see, it is not machined into the body of the transceiver. Okay, and the top side of this transceiver includes these buttons, the hard buttons. And here is the fast dialing or tuning dialing, AGC, automatic gain control, VFO, a memory display, the internal automatic tuner. This is the attenuator and preamp, AB, VFO. And here on this side, we can see 3 separate mode buttons, which is the new on this transceiver, because the X5105 includes just the 1 button here, and we can select the band just with this 1 button. Here we can see 3 buttons for SSB, CW, and AM/FM. Here behind we can see two band buttons, and this is the band stack buttons. The PTT button, or push to talk, and internal microphone here right next to the tuning knob. So this is the function buttons, and the purpose of these buttons depends on the menu selected in the firmware. Here on the left side we can see the general menu button, applications, the key button, messaging, or the voice message. Here we have the digital noise filter or something, and digital filter. This is a variable filter for receiving. The knob is bigger than the X5105. You can see that. This is flat, much more flat than this one. That means this X5105 is maybe a little bit better if you carry this transceiver inside some pocket. This is a little bit wider because of this knob, but also under the knob we can see here the foam protect this radio against the dust. So I have just a slight feeling that this knob is touching the body of this transceiver, but it is not true. It is just due to this foam, and I think that after some time it will be fine. All right, and the protection foil on the screen. Yeah, this is my most favorite thing on the new transceiver, to do something like that. All right, so here we can see a beautiful screen, 4-inch screen. Here on the left side, you can see the BNC connector, the same as was used here on the 5105. The IQ output, DC power cord, power socket. And on the right side, you can see the host USB-C, and this connector is for connection with the computer. This is the slot for the micro SD card, speakerphone, keyboard, and accessories connection, and the mic. And the warranty label is right here. Okay, so let me turn on the transceiver. So let's check firstly the Xiegu X5105. Total weight is 908 grams. And now the Xiegu X6100, 845 grams. So this radio is 50 grams lighter than the X5105. Now the size of the radio, so the X5105, I just measured the body of the radio. It's 17 centimeters. 6100 is 18 centimeters. 1 centimeter bigger. And the height, the X5105 is 9.5 centimeter high. The X6100 is 8.9 centimeter high. Yeah, there is a little difference. And the depth of this both radios, almost 4.5 centimeters. Here we have almost 5 centimeters. Okay, so the depth is almost the same. We need to count with these buttons. You can see that there are buttons here and the knobs, and here they are not. So the X5105 is flattered much more than the 6100. Now let me show you how long it takes to turn on this new X6100 transceiver. I need to push this button for about 4 seconds to turn on this radio. And now it's and now it is turning on. So now let me show you how long it takes on the 5105. And it's done. So the main difference between both radios is an internal operating system in this SDR transceiver. This is traditional superhead radio, so the booting of this radio takes much shorter time than this one. The menu system in this radio automatically detects the microphone type. So when you're using an external mic, just connect and the radio knows that the microphone has been connected. So you will be able to transmit with this mic. If you disconnect the mic, it will detect that it have to use an internal mic here next of this tuning knob. For now, I connect my magnetic loop antenna, but there is not really good conditions here. Not many signals here on this location. But I would like to show you how the SWR scanner works on this new radio compared to the X5105 radio, okay? So we need to go to the app, to the applications, and now select this SWR scan. This screen is not a touch screen, so for all these features you need to use this function button.
Agora são 6h39. A gente dá bom dia para o Daniel que está chegando. Grande abraço, hein, Daniel? Tudo de bom. Para o Manuel, também chegou agora. Grande abraço, tudo de bom. Cabral, demais corujas e amigos da rodada Alto-falante. Ótima sexta-feira, tudo de bom, ok? Lembrando que em janeiro a gente começa mais 3 cursos na rodada Alto-falante. Quem quiser fazer com a gente, tem 3 opções: via radiofrequência, via internet na live e via playlist, ok? Via internet, live e playlist, em qualquer lugar do planeta. Via radiofrequência, aqui em São Paulo, um pouquinho mais longe, uns 100 e poucos quilômetros, mas não muito além disso, tá bom? Então serão 4 meses de aulas, 3 cursos, CW, legislação e comando de rodada. E lembrando, a qualquer momento, Qualquer dúvida você tira com a gente aí durante a rodada, ok? Sábados, domingos, feriados, primeira edição na parte da manhã, segunda edição à tarde, tá bom? Não tem tempo ruim, né? Tem dúvida? A qualquer momento a rodada está girando, você entra e tira a dúvida, ok? Com a legislação, eu já abro aqui a legislação, a gente dá uma lida aí juntos e tiramos a dúvida, ok? Então tá aí, outra informação para os amigos, que anteontem tivemos aí problemas no áudio, para quem estava via radiofrequência. Então a rodada foi bem curta na primeira edição, aproximadamente 1 hora, e na segunda edição mais curta ainda, 15 minutos. Tá? Porém, encontramos aí o problema, já foi resolvido e águas passadas, né? Maravilha. Tudo em ordem, tudo funcionando agora, sem problemas, ok? O problema foi na mesa, né? Para quem está interessado, eu tenho 2 saídas ali, uma vai para o rádio e outra vai para o meu amplificador, né? Que dá para os monitores que eu uso, ok? E tem uma outra saída que é digital, né? Que vem para o computador, né? Que é a mesa é híbrida, analógica, digital. Então, das 3 opções, as demais funcionavam, né? A digital, uma analógica, né? Que vem para o amplificador, vem para os monitores. E outra analógica deu pau, né? Não funciona ou não sei por que cargas d'água, né? A gente trocou a saída, tem várias opções. Peguei uma outra P10, funcionou, então, sem problemas. Tá bom? Mas fica aí o porquê, né, dos vídeos tão curtos aí anteontem, ok? Então tá aí. E vamos em frente. Quem tá vendo esse rádio aqui, esse rádio foi lançado no começo do ano, ok? Ainda pode-se dizer que é um lançamento, né? É o C.RODADA X6100, ok? Rádio QRP, HF 50 MHz, e o PAULO, né, que é um radioamador lá da Eslováquia, tá vendo um teste com esse radinho bem legal, hein? Faz DX, tendo uma antena boa, né, mesmo que QRP, o rádio chega longe, ok? Então, vou deixar a oportunidade aos amigos com um bom dia.
And something about the IQ. Go back and the display setting. Here we can play with the spectrum scope, with the waterfall and the backlight, like here. So just select the feature you want, and then we can use this knob, or you can just push this button here, plus and minus, right? Go back, and the system setting. Here we can set the time just by pushing this knob button here to OK icon and exit. So going back again, the system info. Here you can find the firmware version. This is mine, 1.1. And firmware update. I will show you later how to upgrade this radio, which is very, very easy. All right, and the one more feature is the audio message. So you can record your audio and transmit it. If you are somewhere in the menu, just press the general menu here and then press the message. Now you can see the voice down there. So by pressing the voice, you will see this screen. It is waiting for recording. This is the idle right here. So by pressing this record button and talking to your microphone, you will record your voice, your CQ. So let me show you. Hello CQ, this is Oscar Mike 0 Echo Tango. And press this stop button. Okay, the play button wouldn't work on this firmware version. So just go to exit. And now go to the application. or you can tune your transmitting frequency, let's say 200. Okay, go to the app, select the voice call, and here you can see recorded the message. It's 6 seconds long.
Hello CQ, this is Oscar Mike 0 Echo Tango.
And again.
Hello CQ, this is Oscar Mike 0 Echo Tango.
All right, so pretty nice feature, and it's very useful when you're tired calling CQ, and this is cool. You can eat, you can drink, and your radio still transmitting on this frequency and keep the frequency occupied. With my current firmware, I cannot go down with tuning to 1 Hertz or 10 Hertz. I have just the 2 options, 100 Hertz and 1 kilohertz. And how to do the switch, you can just push the FST button here and watch here. This is 1 kilohertz, this is 100 hertz. If you wish to use an internal tuner in this radio, just use this button here, the ATU. By push and hold this button for a few seconds, the ATU will be turned on and will tune your antenna. Yeah, there's no need to tune the antenna because I'm precisely on the band, on the frequency, but I can go a little bit to the side, much further. Yeah, that's how it works. This radio has also the CW decoder, and it has also the RTTY decoder and BPSK decoder. I will show you how it looks like. Go to the app menu and select the modem. So here we can see the BPSK mode, and by pressing this button, you can select the RTTY and the CW mode. Here in this window, it should appear the CW decoded signal. But in this moment, I don't have any CW signal. Also here you can see the rate or the speed, which you can select by this knob here on the left. It's words per minute. Okay, so there is also one more thing what I would like to say. The charging system of this radio. As you can see that this transceiver has included this power adapter charger, which is a 5-volt charger. So to use this charger, you need to do something in the menu, because if the charging is turned off in the menu, the radio will not charge with this charger. As you can see here, I'll connect this. And the LED is not blinking, which means that the battery is not charging in this case. So what we have to do, turn on the radio and go to the menu, radio setting 1. So here the radio setting 1 and select the charger. As you can see, in this case is the charger off. Select on and go out from the menu. Turn the radio off. And here, see the LED. Yeah, it is blinking. That's fine. So your 5-volt charger is now currently working and charging the battery inside the radio. For the upgrade, you have to use a micro SD card. In my case, I will use a small micro SD card. This is 4 GB. You don't need much bigger the SD card, and put the SD card into the computer slot. And go to the website radiodt.com, and you will find the link down in the video description. Find this new Zygo X6100 here and click on the icon. Get this software right here and download. Save it to your computer, let's say on desktop. The file has been downloaded. You have to right click here on this file, and you have to unpack this file to the same folder. So here is unpack this file, open the file, and you will see the SD tool. You can see also the manual, how to do that, and the log. So open the SD tool first and install the Rufus 3.10. There is also and open a battery charger, and be sure that the charging is turned on in the menu of your transceiver. Now just put the SD card, contacts facing to you, into the slot here on the right side of this transceiver. Push it, and now we can just turn on the transceiver and waiting what will happen. The upgrade process should start automatically. Okay, this is the upgrade process, and down on the bottom of the screen you can see the process. Whole process takes maybe a few seconds. And here is the countdown to reboot. All right, so this radio rebooted or just shut down, and now we can remove the micro SD card from the slot. Don't forget to remove it, because the upgrade process after next boot your transceiver will be back again, and the process will repeat. All right, so now we normally start the radio. A long press of the power button. All right, now go to the system setting. And with this multifunctional knob, go to the firmware upgrade. Press the multifunction knob. Here we can see the file, the upgrade file, and push the upgrade button here. Of course, again,
agora são 6h55. Lembrando os amigos que estamos ao vivo lá na internet. Quem acompanha a rodada alto-falante aí diariamente também poderá acompanhar pela internet. Estamos aí em qualquer lugar do planeta, ok? Entra no YouTube, digita a rodada alto-falante, é só clicar no ao vivo, tá bom? Clicou no ao vivo, você vai estar na live aí com a gente, tanto na primeira edição, na parte da manhã, como na segunda edição à tarde, e também aos sábados, domingos e feriados. Tranquilo? Quem acompanha os cursos pode tirar dúvidas aí via internet, não tem problema, ok? Quem é radioamador, quem não é radioamador, entra lá na live e faz aí a pergunta, tira dúvidas. Eu sempre consulto a legislação e te dou um retorno baseado na nossa legislação do radioamadorismo, ok? Eu nunca respondo no achômetro, né? Ou a gente já conhece, né, responde aí o que é mesmo, ou a gente abre a legislação e dá uma confirmada, ok? Principalmente quando se trata de análise de bandas, modos de operação, enfim. Temos aí 2 tabelas referência, então a gente sempre olha essas tabelas ou mesmo as normas, as legislações do radioamadorismo, tranquilo? Então fica a dica para os amigos, tanto quem é radioamador como quem não é radioamador, a qualquer momento entra na live e tira dúvidas aí com a gente, ok? A gente está aqui para isso mesmo, né? Para ajudar os amigos, tá bom? Para quem não sabe, a rodada alto-falante vai para 23 anos, agora em agosto de 2023. Né? E mesmo antes da rodada alto-falante, que iniciou em agosto de 2000, tiveram outras rodadas que a gente fazia, ok? Mesmo lá nos 11 metros, né? Onde eu comecei com 15 anos, também, né? Comecei já em rodadas, em AM, enfim. Então, a nossa experiência aí com rodadas é bem grande. E dá para ajudar aí os amigos. Até, né, quem tiver interesse de fazer a sua rodada, de começar uma rodada em HF, em V, em U, modos digitais, não importa, né? Os procedimentos são os mesmos, né, em qualquer banda, comprimento de onda, frequência, modo de operação, enfim. Né, esses procedimentos são válidos para o radioamadorismo em geral, né? Em todas as bandas aí você se aplica esses conceitos básicos, ok? Bom, deixar espaço para os amigos, 6h59, oportunidade com bom dia.
and now I will try turn on the charger in the setting here. So charger is on. So you can see 920 milliamps, 930 milliamps. This is with charger on and the maximum backlight and also the maximum volume. So
Bom dia. Entrou alguém aí dando bom dia pra gente. Bom dia, bom dia. PY2EXU, adiante.
Tô por aqui, Paulo. Tô na Coruja, bom dia a todos aí, boa sexta aí.
Ô, Cabral, grande abraço, hein? Sempre aí com a gente, via radiofrequência e via internet. Tudo em paz, tranquilo, Daniel? Ô, Cabral. Né, como que anda aí o andamento? Tem alguma novidade em relação lá ao site da Anatel? Por enquanto, nenhuma novidade, ô Cabral.
Negativo, Paulo, novidade. Comecei a trabalhar agora, graças a Deus. Estou fazendo uma solda aqui em casa. Estamos aí, já estou indo pro batente.
Positivo. Bom, tranquilo. A hora que der, aí você manda abraço, não é? Boa sorte aí, tá bom, Cabral? Bom batente. É o que eu falo, né? Primeiro batente, família, compromisso, depois o nosso hobby. Então, fica à vontade aí. Grande abraço e tudo de bom. 7 horas em ponto. Mais alguém?
Hotel. Oscar Zulu 8 Charlie Tango Hotel is calling CQ and America.
Oscar Mike 0 Echo Tango QRP.
QP station. Only the QP station.
Okay, this is
Tá, bom dia aqui pro Daniel, lá de Minas Gerais, PY2EXU, Papa Yankee Alpha, e também para o nosso amigo Alexandre, lá por Vinhedo, né? Grande abraço, Alexandre. Um abraço também para a família, né? Nosso amigo João, futuro radioamador, né? Filhão aí do Alexandre, para quem não sabe, ok? É isso aí, aqui tudo em paz, tranquilo, tá bom? Agora, viu, Alexandre? Agora, né? Anteontem deu pau o áudio aí, tá bom? Tanto que você pegar a gravação de anteontem, primeira edição, né? Deu o quê? 1 hora só, ok? E na segunda edição, deu o quê? Uns 15 minutos, né? Mas foram curtos porque estava com problema áudio. Então, finalizei bem cedo anteontem, arrumei, né? Descobri o problema. Na verdade, é uma saída, né? Uma das saídas não está legal, né? Então, resolvi o problema, mas a saída está com problema ainda. Aí espetei o P10 numa outra saída e resolvido, ok? Então, voltou à normalidade, né? Como você tem várias opções na parte traseira, né? Então, é uma mesa híbrida, né? Toda a parte digital, né? A comunicação é com o computador direto, ok? A parte analógica, né? Vai para o amplificador, né? Que sustenta os monitores, né? De áudio. E outra parte analógica vai para o rádio, ok? Essa parte analógica que vai para o rádio, que é uma saída P10 fêmea, né? Não sei por que cargas d'água deu pau, né? Não está saindo áudio. Falei, bom, eu não vou tirar todos os conectores, abrir a mesa, tentar jogar um limpa-contato, porque não vai dar certo, né? Não dá para fazer isso em 10 minutos, né? É um certo tempo. Falei, vou pegar uma outra saída e resolvido, né? E é o que eu fiz, tá bom, Alexandre? Então, encontrei uma outra saída para o áudio analógico, né? Que entra no rádio. E tá tudo aí funcionando numa boa, ok? É isso aí. Aqui tá tudo tranquilo, sem problemas. Agora, né? Agora voltando à normalidade, ok? Então tá aí. Quanto ao futuro radioamador aí, logo, logo, quem sabe, hein? Quem sabe o João aí já, né, curtindo o rádio, fazendo os contatos com a gente, né, Alexandre? Maravilha. E sexta-feira hoje, né? Olha que maravilha, hein? Uma segunda maravilha, né? Sexta-feira. Quem não gosta, né? Quem não gosta de uma sexta-feira? Então é isso aí. Ah, sim, né? A gente fica. Até porque eu troquei de rádio, né? Ixi, acho que é o rádio, porque eu tinha mexido. Era um problema intermitente. Vinha e tornava a sumir o áudio. Falei, será que é o rádio, né? Será que é a parte de áudio? Né? Como eu jogo áudio, jogo com um certo volume, né? Uma certa quantidade de áudio um pouquinho acima do normal. Falei, bom, deu pau, né? É, exatamente. Mas como eu tenho mais dois de reserva, né? Eu tenho dois FT2980 e um FT2900, que é o antigo que eu usava para rodada, ok? Então, se um der pau, tem um segundo. Se o segundo der pau, tem um terceiro ainda, né? E os três iguaizinho, né? Um é a cara do outro, né? O 2900, né? Exatamente igual ao 2980 e esse que eu estou usando, né? Tá bom? Mas não foi o rádio, ainda bem, né? Troquei o rádio, fiquei 2 dias com outro rádio, né? Voltei com o rádio que eu estava usando, né? E tranquilo. O rádio não deu problema, né? O problema foi a saída da mesa, né? Como a gente já encontrou o problema, troquei a pinagem, resolvido, né? Tá bom? Então é isso aí. E vamos em frente. Oportunidade com um bom dia.
And hopefully we'll catch you soon again. Oscar Mike 0 Echo Tango stroke QP, who's today CTH off and clear.
okay, Peter. 100%. Thank you. 7-3. Bye-bye.
10 a face, QFZ.
Wow, that was pretty.
10 a face, QFZ. 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 10 a
with this little transceiver. I like it. I have the 5105 here. And Peter told me that I need more high frequencies into the audio. And this is my antenna. I turn the antenna towards northwest. Denmark is this way. So going back to the radio, and I will try to make a few more contacts. All right, so let me turn across the band. What is here?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. You're go. No problem whatsoever. I'm by for any call. This is airline check IND. Thank you, Jack. Pacific. Leaving short past Pacific. Mexico 1, Canada. Mexico radio. Mike 1, Charlie, Mike radio. Calling CQDX, CQDX, CQDX Pacific. Leaving short. Perfetto Giovanni, tutto a posto. Marchio.
I think it was the Italian station.
Oscar November 7 Echo Tango.
No.
Ok, deixa eu dar bom dia para o Wagner. Grande abraço, hein, Wagner? Acompanhando a rodada alto-falante por Santos. Seja bem-vindo, tá bom? Você tem várias opções, né? Você pode acompanhar via radiofrequência, né? Que no caso aí, de repente não chega muito bem em Santos, né? O meu sinal. Segunda opção, acompanhar o curso pela internet, na live, ok? Diariamente tem 2 edições. E aos sábados, domingos e feriados, edição única. Somente na parte da manhã, tá bom, Wagner? Ou ainda na playlist, ok? Caso você queira fazer os seus horários, né, não pode fazer aí com a gente de manhã, que é meio apertado o horário por conta do batente, né? Ou à tarde, né, também às 17 horas fica apertado, né, que é um horário complicado, né? 5 da manhã. E 17 horas é um horário que, às vezes, à tarde você está ainda no batente, de manhã está saindo para o batente, né? Então são 2 horários complicados. Tá? Como que faz? Fica na terceira opção, tá bom, Wagner? Você faz via playlist, tá? Que é o seguinte, você entra lá no YouTube, vai no nosso canal, Rodada Alto-falante, tá? Chegou lá, você vai em playlist, ok? Você vai encontrar, cada playlist é um curso. Tá? A primeira playlist é o curso de CW, são 50 videoaulas. Tá? A segunda playlist, comando de rodada, ok? E a terceira playlist, legislação, tá bom? Tem as 4 principais normas do radioamadorismo. A gente dá uma lida em tudo, ok? Cada artigo, cada inciso, parágrafo, né? Explica. E mesmo assim, tendo alguma dúvida, você entra aqui na live e tira a dúvida com a gente, tá bom, Wagner? O curso vai começar agora em janeiro, ok? Dia 2, segunda-feira, tá bom? Serão 4 meses de aulas, ok? Mas fica essa dica, né? Você pode fazer o seu horário fazendo via playlist, tá bom? O que é melhor, você ou faz, né, de um jeito, faz do outro também. Dá para fazer as 2 formas, né? Quando dá, você faz aula com a gente. E quando não dá, você faz a via playlist. Tá bom? Então, dá uma olhada lá no nosso canal, né? Tem vários cursos e boa sorte, ok? Tendo alguma dúvida, entra aí, a gente esclarece. Beleza? Então, tá aí. Positivo. Positivo. Maravilha. E vamos em frente. Dá um ok aqui para o Wagner. Bom, vamos em frente. Mais alguém na frequência?
Thank you guys for watching.
Paulo, bom dia, rodada alto-falante.
Ô, Sandro, bom dia. Grande amigo Sandro, lá por Itaim Paulista. Como que tá o molho, Sandro? Família, as coisas, enfim. Conta pra gente. Grande abraço, PY2EXU. Boa sexta-feira, adiante. Ok. PY2 Sierra Delta November, nosso amigo Sandro, lá por Itaim Paulista. Hoje também chegando a 5, tá bom? Tem se mantido, viu, Sandro? Tem se mantido o sinal, o que é bom, né? Às vezes te ouço a 7, ok? Tem dias que está um pouquinho melhor, né? Te ouço a 7, hoje a 5. Mas não muda, tá? Fica nessa faixa aí. 5, 7, 5, 7, que tá excelente. Né? Tendo áudio, ouvindo aí o áudio, maravilha, né, Sandro? E mais uma vez, obrigado aí pelos votos. Você viu, o Wagner tá lá por Santos, né? O Wagner vai começar o curso aí com a gente, agora em janeiro, ok? Logo, logo, mais um amigo aqui aproveitou os cursos da rodada alto-falante. Né, Wagner? Maravilha. E podendo ajudar, a gente ajuda, né, ô Sandro? Esse é o nosso objetivo no radioamadorismo, né? Sempre colaborar com o hobby, colaborar com os amigos, né? Deixando o radioamadorismo um pouquinho mais iluminado, vamos chamar assim, né? Com mais conhecimento, com mais possibilidades para cada amigo, né? Porque o radioamadorismo é esse universo, né, maravilhoso de conhecimentos. Né? Não se restringe ao bate-papo aqui de uma rodada ou de DX, né, que você faz com outros países, é muito mais do que isso, né? Radioamadorismo é um universo aí infinito de conhecimentos. Né? Basta o amigo, né, abrir a caixinha e vasculhar, né? Você vê que tem muita coisa legal para aprender, né? E a gente colabora aí um pouquinho, humildemente, nesse universo. Então tá aí o amigo Sandro, sempre aí com a gente. Amigaço, né? Sempre dando um apoio, dando uma força aí pra gente, que, né, é um baita presente, né? Ter esses colaboradores é muito bom. Então tá aí o amigo Sandro, bom batente, uma boa sexta-feira e obrigado mais uma vez aí pela força. PY2 Sierra Delta November, adiante.
Parabéns aí pelo seu comentário. Você ilustrou muito bem o que é aí o encanto, a essência, a magia do radioamadorismo, né? A riqueza, como se propõe aí ser de uma maneira um leque, né? De informações, de serviços, de toda essa alegria,
Ok. Corrigido. PU2 Sierra, Bravo November. Sempre anoto errado, né, Sandro? Mas está corrigido aqui. Obrigado mais uma vez, grande abraço. E um bom batente aí pro amigo, tá bom? Sexta-feira, né? Dia bom, todo mundo gosta, né? Quem não gosta de uma boa sexta-feira, né, ô Sandro? É isso aí, ainda mais com o feriadão que tivemos aí na terça, né? Aí que maravilha, hein? Melhor do que isso, só 2, né? Só quem não gosta são os donos de empresas, né? Esse pessoal não gosta muito. A gente gosta, né? É isso aí. Vai lá, ô Sandro. Faturar, né? Vai faturar um QSJ, você não já viu, né? Não paga as contas. Bom, são 7h16. Lembrando, os amigos, estamos ao vivo lá na internet, ok? Quem acompanha a rodada alto-falante, via radiofrequência, também poderá acompanhar via live. Diariamente tem a live, retransmitindo aí com áudio, vídeo, texto. E qualquer lugar do planeta você manda uma mensagem, tira algumas dúvidas, ok? Também faz aí os cursos com a gente, né, sem problemas, né? Ou amigos do Brasil, ou amigos fora do Brasil, né? A gente reconhece que o radioamadorismo é internacional, é ou não é? É multinacional, é um hobby sem fronteiras, né? Radioamadores somos todos nós do planeta Terra, né? E quem sabe também de fora, né? De outros rincões aí no universo. Vai chegar o dia, né, ô Sandro? Vai chegar o dia desses contatos, hein? Logo mais aí, alguns anos para frente, fazendo alguns jacks extragalácticos, hein? Extraplanetários, quem sabe, né? Com o nosso sistema solar ou outros, né, outras galáxias, né? Vai chegar com certeza esse dia, né? Então é só esperar, né? É só ter paciência, né, que logo, logo chega, né? Bom, oportunidade aos amigos com um bom dia.
Paulo, só acrescentando aí, quanto a esse seu último câmbio, que eu achei muito interessante, viu? Não, bem interessante, né? É meio tópico, mas bem interessante. Já temos como precursor aí de tal situação, aí a transição lunar aí, né? Aquela reflexão lunar aí, coisa e tal. Mas legal, viu, Paulo? Bem inteligente o seu comentário. Obrigado, tchau, tchau. Jorge Goiânia, aparece em Jesus, a rodada alto-falante, congratulations.
Positivo, amigo Sandro. PU2 Sierra, Bravo November. É uma outra modalidade interessante, né? Reflexão lunar também é bem bacana, bem interessante. Eu nunca fiz, né? Mas admiro aí quem faça, né? Porque exige antenas boas, aí bem direcionadas, né? Uma certa potência. É interessante, hein? Para quem faz aí, é bem legal, hein? Tá bom, Sandro, vai lá faturar, hein? Um grande abraço e tudo de bom. 7h19.
Because behind it, some people will remember this, the Yesu world map. I have mine from about 30 years ago, still in a frame in my house. So you get one of these too. So there it is, that's your first look at the Yesu FT710, which is going to be available at Ham Radio Outlet very soon. You can place your orders online and get on the back order list if you really want the radio. And it's very sweet. The speaker, like I said before, does come with the radio. And it sounds really good. It's a very nice radio.
There it is. Oh, this one may have been unpacked before. I think it might be a demo. And the reason I'm thinking as such is because, yeah, the tape has already been cut. And there's, yeah, I can see fingerprints on the display, and also there's no plastic cover that usually comes on the display, which is fine because that would have been really in my way. Okay, so bear with me a few minutes and I'll try, through the magic of editing, I'll try to speed up the setup process for you. Okay, here we are looking at the back of the radio. And so, yeah, since this one is a demo and has obviously been used before, the screws are over on this side. You can move them to the other side. See here? These screws hold the external speaker that comes with the radio. Basically $170 value. And so just going to, let me show you. See the slots? So just going to line those up with the screws and let it slip down. There we go. So it stays on the radio. And then you've got a little plug here coming out of the speaker. And it's got a tie. There we go. And then it's going to plug. It doesn't have very far to go. It's going to plug in here, lower left, external speaker. So let's take a look at what else we have here. So this is the tuner or linear amplifier plug. Now on the FTDX10, these are separate. You have a 10 pin to go to a linear amplifier. You have an 8 pin to go to an antenna tuner. It's been combined on this radio, and I think maybe they just were running out of space. So you'll need to get a cable made for your particular tuner or linear amplifier. Now, fortunately for me, I'm using Elecraft, and a lot of the solid-state amps these days are this way, where you have a built-in antenna tuner. And so all I need is the one cable anyway. And I have one coming from Elecraft. So I'll be able to try that out and use the amplifier. Here in the earlier videos, until that cable comes in, I won't be able to use the amplifier. But I'm going to focus mostly on the receiver side of this thing because, well, they all transmit about the same. I'll let the lab guys test the transmitter for, to see if there's any spurious radiations and things like that. But hey, it passed FCC type acceptance, so that should say a good bit about that. So there's your SO239 to plug the antenna in. This is the remote or ALC input. I don't use ALC with my amplifiers. Elecraft actually doesn't even recommend it. Here's the Morse key. And this time they've gone with the small jack instead of the 1/4 inch. And then this is the data connection. And then over here on this side, you've got 2 USBs. You've got the kind that will go like this one here is what I've got that's how it's connected to the computer for FT8. And then this one, you could put a mouse or a keyboard on. Now the FTDX10 has 2 of these. This one only has 1. Again, I guess, they had to make room for that label. And then you have the DVI-D connector here to directly connect a monitor. And that's the same as with the FTDX10. And then, of course, here's your power. And I already have, since they're using a very common, that's the wrong one. That's the one for my FT920. I'll have to get the other one. But I'm going to use my own cable so I don't have to use theirs. So let me get it powered up and we'll take a look. Okay, so let's let the smoke out. No, hopefully not. I'm going to long press the power button and, well, it wakes up. Oh, over here, it's just like the FTDX10. Power, tune for antenna tuner, VoxMox, for voice operated transmitter or manually operated transmitter. And then you got your headphone jack and microphone jack. I don't have a light on right now because I don't want to wash out the display, but it's the same as with the FTDX10 over here on the left-hand side. Of course, I know some of you may be watching this and have never seen or used an FTDX10, but this radio is very, very similar. Okay, so just like most Yaesu radios, it's waking up on 7 megahertz. That's just their default. First thing I'm noticing, no backlit buttons, which was a request or a criticism, however you want to take that, of the FTDX10. See, the FT891 and the FT991/FT991A have backlit buttons, but such is not the case with the 710. I don't know why. I know there were many posts and requests for backlit buttons and many posts of disappointment for not having backlit buttons on the FTDX10. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Yaesu has not seen fit to do that on this radio. You know, it is a budget price radio, but wow, you know, if you've watched my previous videos, you see that it came in very, very high on Rob Sherwood's test, which is arguably the most important test of a receiver. It doesn't get into ergonomics, functionality, whatever that, but just for that particular test, it's, well, just one notch below the FTDX10. Let's flip on an antenna here. Well, and the 3DSS display wakes up. Let me see. This radio has been used before. It's a demo they sent me, so I don't know. I guess everything seems like it's at factory default. Sure does seem to be picking up a lot of noise. That's a pretty high noise level there. But it's on amp 1. No attenuation on the 40-meter band. Well, it's got a button here that'll tune. Look at this. It's the step MCH button. FTDX10 has a similar function. You do it with the outer ring on the FTDX10 has an outer ring outside of the VFO. But this gives you you can go into the menu and set this. The manual shows you how the increments, but this one's doing it in 5 kilohertz. So I'm going to bump up here to a popular frequency that I often hear people on 40 meters. Now, I'm going to go ahead and engage intercept point optimization. Okay, let's check scope level. Press the function button. Guys, I haven't read the manual. I do have it downloaded, but you know, I'm just trusting that there's a lot of similar functionality between this and the FTDX10. So the level here is at -5. So that's going to assign the function knob to do level, and I'm just going to lower the sensitivity of the scope. I got to tell you, that seems like a lot of noise. That's a lot of noise. Let's turn the AF gain up. If you recall, on the FTDX10, the volume is over here and the RF gain's a ring on the outside. This one doesn't use any rings. It's only the knobs, no outer ring. But there's AF gain. Now that heterodyne you're hearing, that is something local. I've already done the breaker test, so it's not coming from my house, but it is something in my neighborhood, and it's only on this frequency. Well, let's try out this digital notch filter. It's so faint, most digital notch filters won't get it, but we'll try it. Yeah, it can't knock it completely out. So let's see about manual notch. I'm going to press the DS. This button serves many duties. There's so it's orange. So we're into this setup. I'm going to move it over to, yeah, look at how that works. Okay, so move it over to notch, tap it. Well, how about that? The default got it. Now I can tell from the way it sounds that notch is set to wide. I'll be changing that. One of the first things I do in the menu. Oh, by the way, so the speaker, the external speaker is over here on the right. You can mount it either left or right. And I'm anxious to play with. Okay, so one question I had that has been answered. No backlit buttons, okay? Could be a disappointment for some of you. If you're in a shack, though, where you run a little bit of lighting, you'll be able to see. Plus, if you're like me, you're going to get to know your way around the radio anyway. I mean, I can work my 5,000 without looking. All right, so I'm going to press function. And down here, this is where it's different than the FTDX10. Well, for one thing, your DNF is not over here in the lower left like it is on a DX10 because, well, it's here because there's no roofing filter in this radio. On the FTDX10, you have attenuation, IPO, or amp 1 or 2, roofing filter, and AGC setting. And this radio has no roofing filter because it's a pure SDR. So Yaesu just took advantage of the opportunity to move something that you might use often to the position where the roofing filter was. Now, I got to be honest with you, this has got a different DSP chip. I've got high hopes for it. This is as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, it has an NXP Semiconductors DSP chip, where most Yaesu radios in the past have used Texas Instruments. The DNF, that is auto notch in other terminology, in the FTDX10 introduces distortion. So that's one of the things I'll be checking out in this radio as well. I don't know how far I'll get in this video. It's an unboxing video. I don't want to get too deep. This is just some initial setup here. So I'm going to go into function and balance. See, it says AESS now right here. So the function knob is now adjusting AESS, and we're adjusting balance. We're determining how much we want to hear from the internal speaker, which is here, versus the external speaker, which is here. You can hear the low, I can hear, you may not be able to hear it, but I can hear the low frequencies coming out of the internal speaker. So just so you know, low frequencies are more omnidirectional. So it doesn't matter that the speaker's pointing straight up. Higher frequencies are directional, so they are coming out of this, the speaker on the right. That is a pretty cool sound. I wish you guys could hear that in stereo. I don't know, maybe if you're wearing headphones, you might be able to make that out, but I'm definitely hearing from both frequencies, both speakers, the different frequencies. I'm hearing the low content here and the high frequencies here. It's kind of a, wow, like a stereo effect or surround sound. So I have to find a signal and listen.
As far as I'm concerned, right here in Simpsonville, about 6 miles southeast of Greenville. And,
wow.
Very near
I definitely hear a lot of low end.
North of us is
I'm going to turn off the DNF.
And a spread of different cities.
Because the guy he sounds overdriven.
Being our nearest big one.
It may be that low end content. So let me go back in.
About an acre and a half. A lot of tall trees.
I didn't have to go back in because I'm already set on AESS balance.
I used them for antennas. Over.
Okay, copy that. K2YN.
So we're determining here how much of this speaker we want to hear, the internal speaker.
My operating station here, I've got the radio.
I can definitely tell when I'm hearing only from this speaker.
A 160 meter loop, and I got the same big trees you got, I guess. Although we're all fine here. I'm in the sandhills of South Carolina, so we're all.
Okay. I'm going to turn off the notch.
They're very tall. I mean, huge. Some of them have got to be 80 feet. And I got my 160 meter loop pulled up pretty well. I'm surrounded by trees.
Okay.
Got about one.
Yeah, see that wide notch is doing some of that muffling. I'm going to fix that right now.
We're in a neighborhood here where we have
just trusting it's in the same spot as it is on DX10.
Common area.
IF knots, look at there. First one wide. I'm going to go to narrow.
And then I got 4 neighbors here, so we're probably on a, I don't know.
Noise blinker rejection.
Everyone's got a.
Agora são 7h35 e a gente lembra os amigos que os cursos da rodada alto-falante são também para amigos que não são radioamadores, ok? Tem o nosso amigo Wagner, que admira muito aí o radioamadorismo, ok? E também vai fazer o curso aí com a gente, tá bom? Então, é bom frisar, hein? Não só radioamadores, ok? Quem é PX, quem é coruja, quem é dexista, quem gosta aí do radioamadorismo, ok? Não é radioamador, né? Mas gosta de ficar ouvindo aí o bate-papo aí dos radioamadores, as frequências do radioamadorismo, ok? É um coruja nato, né? Ou um dexista, né? Ou mesmo um radioamador, né? Então, o curso aí está aberto a todos, tá bom? O Wagner, que está lá em Santos, né, estava perguntando, interessado, quando vai ser o início do curso. Tá? Então, repetindo, não só para ele, mas para quem tiver interesse, começa em janeiro, ok? Janeiro, dia 2, segunda-feira, a gente começa aí mais uma jornada com 3 cursos. E sempre um após o outro. Né? Quem não puder fazer com a gente via radiofrequência, ou via live, né, que é concomitantemente, ok? Mesmo horário, a partir das 5 da manhã e a partir das 17 horas, segunda edição. Então, você poderá fazer o curso via live, ok? Via playlist. Você entra lá no YouTube, digita a rodada alto-falante, vai lá no nosso canal, ok? E cada playlist é um curso diferente, tá bom? Se der para fazer nos horários da rodada, maravilha. Se não der para fazer nos horários que a gente propõe aí para os amigos, né, escolhe aí o seu horário e faz, né, no melhor horário que você puder, ok? Tá aí 24 horas por dia à disposição, todo o conteúdo lá do nosso canal, ok? Basicamente 3 cursos, né? O curso de CW, com 50 videoaulas, o curso de legislação, que abrange as 4 principais normas do radioamadorismo, e o curso comando de rodada, ok? Totalmente baseado na nossa experiência aí no rádio. Desde os 11 metros, né, passando por rodadas em HF, SSB, CW, rodadas em VHF, UHF, ok? Todas aí que a gente comandou, com exceção de CW, né, que eu participava, ok? Participava lá de uma rodada em telegrafia, mas não comandava, mas a gente já tem toda essa experiência. Então, o objetivo é repassar essa experiência, esse aprendizado, né, como a gente fez aí o curso, tá? O curso é 100% baseado aí na nossa experiência, tá bom? Então, não tem aquela pontinha de busca lá da internet ou de outros amigos, né? 100% baseado em experiência aí do radioamadorismo. E também dos 11 metros, tá bom? Um pouquinho lá dos 11 metros, um pouquinho aqui do radioamadorismo, de algumas bandas, modos diferenciados aí para cada rodada, ok? Mas 100% rodada alto-falante, tranquilo? Não chupamos ideia de ninguém, né? Tudo isso que a gente está tratando aí nos cursos são elementos trazidos aí da própria rodada, tá bom? Experiência nossa aí no dia a dia, ok? Então tá aí. Boa sorte para quem for fazer o curso. E lembrando, mais uma vez, esses cursos para quem são radioamadores, amigos que são PX e amigos, né, que não são radioamadores e podem fazer o curso da mesma forma, ok? Tirar dúvidas, né, pela internet, na live, tá bom? Nenhum problema, hein? Tranquilo? Então, boa sorte para quem for começar o curso aí em janeiro com a gente. Dia 2, segunda-feira, iniciando. 7 horas 39 minutos. Oportunidade com um bom dia.
Out the middle a little bit, just not notched it out, but dropped it so it's almost a smiley face. If you imagine that, turn your head to the left.
You know, you're so close. I don't know.
All right, let's back out of here and go find somebody else.
Yeah, and it.
Oh, this button down here is not lock like it is on the FTDX10. This is a fine. Watch the display. See? And then turn it off again, and you'll see fine light up in the display. And now you're tuning in larger increments. So, let's see what else we have here on the 40-meter band.
Changes the bandwidth. So like right now I got 2.7 plus 2.7, and I think I'm getting like 3.2.
All right, here's something interesting. Some of you noticed that the RF gain on the FTDX10 had the sound of a scratchy potentiometer when you rotate it, and it can't be, of course, because these are digital encoders, and this one's doing it too. Obviously, borrowing from the same firmware. Listen. Okay, it doesn't bother me. Set it and forget it, but it's a minor thing, but that did carry forward.
Actually, what does that sound like right there? Oh, that sounds pretty good. That's a little wide. Getting some background noise. Turn that down. My wife's in there cooking.
Now, by the way, this is a software-defined radio, so it's going to be very sensitive, although in Rob's numbers, that was neck to neck with the FTDX10. Like one of them was a little higher gain with the preamp, with amp 1 on, and the other was a higher gain with amp 2 on. So they were kind of balancing one another out. But it is going to be very sensitive, and on these lower frequencies, even intercept point optimization might not be enough. Uh-oh, somebody's off frequency.
So now we got one on 89, then we got another one on 92.
So I'm going to engage 6 dB of attenuation. Now I'm gonna level with you on the DX10, FTDX10. I run on this band. I run IPO and 6 dB of attenuation. That's just my standard.
Throw it in the iron skillet there, right? That's pretty wide there on 92. You know they hear the splatter.
Okay. That's only 1 kilohertz away. You're not going to knock that out. But remember, this radio is third in the world now for being able to do, to being able to block interference from 2 kilohertz away.
All right, buddy.
And by the way, the test is run on CW, so don't get too excited and think you can do that on sideband.
Have a good day. Kilo Juliet 4, Romeo Echo Zulu, 73. Yeah, I'm going to get out of here.
And I know some of you want me to compare this to the FTDX10. I'll get around to doing that. This is going to be a long series, but let's not try to do comparisons just yet. I can tell you right now, based upon what Rob Sherwood's numbers are, they're going to be neck to neck. The FTDX10 seems to have an edge when it comes to interference coming from 100 kilohertz away. Just imagine like you got a neighbor and they're on a different band and you're on, let's say you're on 40 meters and they're on 20 meters. The FTDX10 is going to have a better number as far as rejecting the interference from the other band. In that category, it's 141 dB dynamic range versus 129 for this. The FTDX 101 rules on that one at 147 dB. Again, that's for blocking interference from 100 kilohertz away. That's actually about one of the only numbers this thing really was inferior on as far as the FTDX10. But by the way, it's still a good number. This radio is in the top 10. It's number 3, as I've explained in previous videos. So if you go to Sherwood's list and you see it in number 4, read the footnote for the number 2 radio, read footnote Y. I've covered that in previous videos, so I won't do it here. Usually low frequency.
A bunch of D104 heads, and I've got, let's say, 1, 2,
so
3,
just
4, 5.
To reiterate, what I've done in this video, of course, power the radio up. And you know me, I like to cut the grass. As far as the scope is concerned, let me explain. I'm going to change the color pattern here, or color to the one that I use when I say cutting the grass. There we go. Where you got the green. And I set the level. Now, see, on the FTDX10, you have the advantage of that outer ring, which I leave set because you've got that C.S button, custom switch. And I leave that on C.S. I leave the C.S set for level, so I can just reach up and grab the ring. That was the ionoson going across, checking propagation. I leave the outer ring on the FTDX10 set for level, so I can quickly go up there and adjust this, because if you change IPO and attenuation settings, that's going to affect the level coming into the scope. Think of it as scope sensitivity, even though it says level. So see, like, what's this? I don't want to see all that. That's noise. I only want to see the signal spikes. So I'm going to cut the grass. See, that's beginning to look better. I don't want to go so low that I can't see a weak signal, but I definitely want to get rid of the noise. So I call that cutting the grass. See, it fades to blue. That looks pretty cool. So there you learn something else in the menu. little bonus there on the video. I'm going to change this one too. The level, the peak. I like 4 or 5, and I'll tell you why. If you look, see what it's doing, brighten it up a little bit. Well, you can actually see a little white spike, especially in CW. You see a little white spike, which is live. The rest of this is memory, okay? There's an old saying from my youth. There was a company called Memorex that made tapes for recording, and the commercial was, is it live or is it Memorex? Well, in the background, what you see going toward the back, that's memory. That's history. Think of it as history. That's already happened. But in the foreground, by setting the peak the way I just did, 4 or 5 will do it. You're now, it accentuates the live portion with a white spike. Just makes it a little easier to see. Certain color settings, it'll be less noticeable. I have found that in the factory default, which is color 5 and color 10, it's easier to see. And it's even better if you've got it displayed up on an external monitor. And do remember, let me just say this out of the gate, so to protect you from any damage, try to get, if you're going to do an external monitor, try to use what's called a DVI-D monitor. I know they're a little harder to find now, but the resolution the radio puts out to a monitor, it really doesn't need HDMI. It probably would have saved them some space on the back of the radio to go with HDMI, but there's some licensing involved. I personally think, and I've been shot down about this, but I'll just say it again, I personally believe that Yaesu got a good deal on a bunch of DVI-D connectors, and that's why they went with it, and it saves us money in the purchase price. So.
Bom dia para o nosso grande amigo José Geraldo. Grande abraço. PY2 Foxtrot, Kilo Foxtrot. Ótima sexta-feira, tudo de bom, ok? Obrigado aí pelos votos. E fica com a gente, tá bom? José Geraldo. Grande amigo e acompanhando sempre a rodada aí com a gente, não é? É isso aí. Lembrando os amigos que quem perdeu a aula de CW, hoje é aula 33, ok? CW, aula 33, segunda edição, às 17 horas, um novo curso. Ou melhor, uma nova aula para os amigos, tá bom? Temos aí 2 edições por dia, portanto, perdeu na primeira, na segunda, a repeteco, ok? Então, aula número 33, à tarde, 17 horas, segunda edição. Tranquilo? E lembrando, mais uma vez, está chegando o fim do ano, se aproxima aí o Natal, né? Dezembro, estamos aí já a menos de 2 semanas de dezembro. Então, lembrando, acabando agora dezembro, acabam também os 3 cursos, ok? CW, legislação e comando de rodada. Virou o ano, a gente começa novamente do zero, ok? Os 3 cursos. Quem tiver interessado, faz aí com a gente. Positivo. Provavelmente, né, Zé Geraldo? Eu vou falar com o governador, né, vou marcar uma reuniãozinha com o governador, né, te aviso, você vai comigo lá. Fala, assim não é possível, hein? Assim os radioamadores vão ficar prejudicados, é muito prédio subindo, né, o José Geraldo? Vamos reclamar, né? Vamos reclamar lá com o governador, convidar o prefeito também, ó. Governador e prefeito vão participar da nossa reunião, hein? Abaixa os prédios. Todo mundo morando em casa, prédio só atrapalha a gente, né? Que coisa, hein? José Geraldo, vamos fazer essa reunião, hein? Arrancar esse monte de prédio da frente das nossas antenas, né? Onde já se viu, né? Cadê o direito do radioamador, né? Cadê o direito da antena? Então, passando por cima aí da nossa legislação, hein? Não pode, né? É isso aí, vamos pegar no pé dele, hein? No pé, no braço e fazer uma reuniãozinha que surta algum efeito, né? Então, tá aí. Bom, então, voltando a falar do curso, dos cursos, né? Serão 3 cursos, começando dia 2, segunda-feira, janeiro, ok? Então, quem tiver interesse, vem com a gente aí. O Mauro tem que ser um dos participantes, né? Ele traz toda a turma das bikes, viu, Zé Geraldo? não sei quantos milhões de ciclistas ele traz para o nosso objetivo, né? Engorda, né? Engorda do nosso lado aí. Boa ideia, hein? Maurão aí vai dar uma força grande. E vamos em frente. Oportunidade com um bom dia.
Of course, how much from that speaker versus the external speaker, and then the crossover frequency here, AESS-CF. I don't know if CF stands for crossover frequency. I haven't read what it says in the manual yet, but that's in my thinking. That's what that is. I come from the music industry, and we call them crossovers. Determining whether we're going to send 700 hertz and lower to this speaker, or the other option was we tap that 1000 hertz and lower into the internal speaker. And again, I'm running on the default. And so I set the level. That is something you're going to do per band, and it's going to vary according to whether you've got IPO on and attenuation and what level of attenuation you're running. I changed the peak to LV5. 4 or 5 is good, so you can see that little white spike at the beginning. That's the live signal, and the colored signals as it fades its way back, that's history. On the 3DSS, we'll talk about the waterfall later. And now you got a dimmer for the display. There's a lot of things in here. It's kind of intuitive, really. But the color, I changed it from 5 to 10. In a future video, we'll be setting a microphone up and everything. By the way, it uses the same mic as the FTDX10. No surprise there. All right. And then finally, also, I went into radio setting. I created a smiley face, as we call it in the audio world. And I just gave a little bit of a boost to treble, a little, knocked down the mids a little bit. You may prefer the mids. It depends upon your hearing. Like I said, those who are hearing impaired, you've got some good control over the sound. Now you even have the AESS function added on top of this feature here, where you can control the bass, mids, and treble. FTDX10 has this, of course, as well. And so we did that. And the other thing I showed you was operation setting. I set the IF notch to narrow. And you'll know, if you've seen any of my videos at any length on this channel, especially CW, you see how I use the manual notch even for CW, and I need it on narrow to do that little notch trick I do on CW. But also, too, you noticed in the beginning, when it was set at its default wide, it really gobbled up some of the sound and took away some of the clarity. I want that notch filter to zero in only where I need it. All right, so I hope you found the video helpful and informative. This one's a box opening video, so I think it's going to be over a half hour long, but I hope you gleaned some insight into the FT710. We'll be putting it through the paces in this series. Thank you to Ham Radio Outlet for making this available to me to shoot this series. They're going to give me enough time, I think, to be able to shoot a good series with this radio. So stay tuned for more. Subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload new videos, usually a couple a week, sometimes more if there's news to share. And hey, this video is brought to you by a team of Patreon supporters who help offset the cost of me doing this. So I want to shout out and thank them. If you'd like to join the team and help me continue to bring videos out like this, go to www.patreon.com/ For H&H here, the rumor mill says that Yaesu will be announcing a new transceiver soon. We'll find out, supposedly sometime in August. But this is what I have about it so far. There's a few other, if you haven't seen this already, it's floating around on social media and a few websites. Rumored to be the FT710. Now, this does not look like an artist rendering type of drawing, so it does look like a photo, so I'm presuming that's a prototype. The FT710 should be a 100-watt version of this, again, supposedly. And then there should be an FT710M, as in Mary, which would be a 50-watt version. And then, and I'm assuming that might be for countries where they have a limit on their power. And then a 10-watt version, which would be FT710S, Sierra, or for folks like me, SOTA. Because if the 10-watt version is what I would hope, look at my mouse here, would be maybe cut off right along in here. It wouldn't have to be as big because it's not producing 100 watts. That would be ideal for SOTA. Now, what would even be better is if it has an internal tuner. Now, if you look over here on the left, it looks just like an FTDX. By the way, look, it's screaming FTDX10. All the way down here on the left is FTDX10. It's got power, tune, Vox Mox, headphones, mic jack. So I do see a tune button here on this 100 watt model. We hope there's a tune button there on the 10 watt version, which would be great. That would put this head to head with an ICOM IC705 for us SOTA folks. But the 705 does not have an internal tuner. So that would be great. Now, this is not going to have 2 meters and 70 centimeters, according to what I've read so far, like the IC705. That doesn't bother me because when I'm hiking up a mountain, I've got my HT clipped on, and I'm usually what I call chumming. I'm talking to folks on repeaters or simplex and saying, hey, I'm going to be on a mountain in a few minutes. Can you give me some contact? So that doesn't actually bother me. I would say if you still want the shack in the box experience, then the FT991A is where you want to go. You get all mode and 70 centimeters and 2 meters. So this is not looking like it's going to have the 2 meter 70 centimeters, but 160 through 6 definitely looks like an FTDX10. Let me point out some things that I've noticed just from looking at the photo. So the display, pretty much FTDX10. Now I can tell by the scale here, the size of the knobs and the VFO, this radio is smaller than an FTDX10. I'm thinking possibly even a little bit smaller than an FT991A. So which would be good. And again, if the 10 watt model is cut off here a little shorter, if it's a couple of pounds of radio, that'd be great for summits on the air. And again, if they put that tuner in there. Now, for 10 watts, the components for an ATU don't have to be as large. The capacitors and inductors can be smaller. And maybe they could even fit a tuner in there that is a wide range tuner. Most of the tuners that you get in your radios today are what I call a touch-up tuner. Your antenna's already close, less 3-to-1 or less, and then it can, bring you down to a 1-to-1, 1.1 to 1, 1.05 to 1, what have you. But the wide range tuner would be great if they can fit that in there in the 10 watt version. Again, just assuming they would even have this button on the 10 watt version that does the tuning. Now the display, I'm just going to say right quick, looks like FTDX10, even has the 3D spectrum scope mode, has the oscilloscope, has the AFFFT, that's audio frequency fast Fourier transform. Okay, it's a big word, but to say that we can monitor audio here, ours and people we're listening to. And I've shown that here on the channel in some videos. So really, other than that, it looks identical to a FTDX10, but there is an exception. Watch closely. I'm going to work my way from attenuation. That's on the FTDX10. IPO, that's on the FTDX10. Roofing filter is not there. Look, digital notch filter, DNF. So that's interesting. So number one, that is one of my criticisms of the FTDX10. The DNF, the digital notch filter, if you leave it on, I don't leave it on, okay? If you leave it on, it distorts the receive audio of a sideband signal that's, like S9 or better, has a tendency to distort those. Now, if you've got yours left on, you may not notice that. You might just think that's just the way they sound, or that's the way, it's just the small speaker in the radio or whatever. Try turning the DNF off if you've got yours turned on. It is default, or I should say by default, it is off, but some people just automatically engage it and leave it on. Like I said, it's Yaesu speak for auto notch. The one in the FTDX10 introduced distortion, especially on stronger signals. So I just leave it off. If I need notch, I just use the manual notch. So it's interesting that they've replaced roofing filter with that. Well, let's talk about that. Where's the roofing filter? It could be like the FT891. It has one 15 kilohertz roofing filter, crystal, physical roofing filter in the front end. And then the DSP takes care of the rest. And it does have some mighty fine DSP, still one of the most fun CW rigs. And I've used mine to make it all the way to Mountain Goat and beyond for summits on the air. My 891 has just been a beast. So maybe that's what they've done here. Maybe this doesn't have the roofing filters. Maybe it's not even a down conversion receiver. Up conversion is what we've had for many, many years, where the first intermediate frequency, the first IF, was outside of the HF spectrum, usually around 40 megahertz or even 70